Well, I'm here to bring you a bit more bad news. I'm sorry. My organization, Mission America, we do a lot on the issue of homosexuality, the agenda to our children. And where I jumped on board this issue was about 15 years ago after I became a believer and left my liberal progressive viewpoint, my agnostic viewpoint, became a believer in Jesus Christ, and then changed my worldview and started reading things I had never really known were out there before, that are really out there and very well known about facts and figures about lifestyles, about the abortion issue. Then I began reading about the homosexuality issue, and I'm going, this is something that's really going to change our country. But where I really jumped out of my seat and got on board this issue was when I read about what was happening to our kids. And the more I read, I kept thinking, this is a joke, right? This is a cruel joke. This can't be happening. The more I researched, the more I found, indeed, it was happening, and I kept running across the NEA and their name and the OEA. Jesus Christ told us, some people say it's not even Christian to bring this up. You shouldn't be criticizing these folks. It's, you shouldn't, you should turn your cheek. Jesus taught us to turn the other cheek. Yes, that's true about us. It's not true about someone else. When we see children being harmed and corrupted and endangered and misled and the truth being suppressed in unrighteousness, which is happening all over, we need to come to their rescue. The union allowed, you go back a ways, 1987, they allowed the establishment of a GL, Gay and Lesbian Caucus. That, over the years, morphed itself into the Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgendered Caucus, as those two other identities were boldly, when no one was objecting, nobody seemed to be looking, they were just locked onto there. And if you look in the backgrounds of some of these teachers in this caucus, these folks became the pushers, as I understand, so to speak, at the National Education Association level and at their state levels to put these policies forward. They are radical activists in their own states. In 1995, that year, the NEA passed at least 15 measures regarding homosexuality and these deviant lifestyles. Sex education was to include approval of basically all of this, homosexuality, bisexuality. They were recommending that schools include gay and lesbian history. This is essentially propaganda that holds up supposed real or supposed figures from history, always in a positive light to kids. Like, for instance, they'll claim that Abraham Lincoln was a closeted homosexual, or Eleanor Roosevelt, or even the Apostle Paul. I mean, those are the kinds of things you get. They recommended that school counseling be available when kids had doubts about their sexuality, that school counseling, private and confidential, even apart from parents, parental notification and permission was not to be required. And that these kids could be, it was always to affirm homosexuality whenever the student had a doubt about that. They also wanted to see diversity training in even at the pre-K level in their recommendations there. So by 2002, now NEA is beginning to well into using the term safe schools. Now, this is all over our school systems. Many of you are teachers, and you know what this means probably a lot better than I do. But from studying homosexual activism to our kids, I'm seeing that safe schools essentially means a Christ and Christian value-free environment where no child it's not slurs and insults are a different story. Those are separate and can always be punished. What they really want is to silence opposing viewpoints, even responsibly delivered. That's where this is going. So a safe school is one where no child is ever warned against homosexuality or bisexuality or changing your gender. They're trying to connect the dots here. They're starting this connection, which was started by GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, to connect traditional values to violence and bullying, and always to try to always marry those two in people's minds. If there's an incident of bullying, it's because there's a climate of hate created by Focus on the Family or the American Family Association or the Tea Party. By 2009, The NEA had taken on the same-sex marriage issue much more upfront, in a much more visible way. They voted to financially help their state affiliates, the ones that wanted to establish some form of same-sex union, that is, a civil union, a domestic partnership, or marriage, as it is now in 6 states. What GLSEN is an organization that has basically set up in schools throughout this country, starting with 10 in the early 1990s, now up to, they say, 4,000, and I think it's probably close, homosexual clubs in schools. They are the group responsible for bypassing parents, bypassing school boards, going directly to kids, interacting, making kids activists, telling them their propaganda, using the internet. The internet was born for this kind of group. Bob Chase, very cozy relationship. Bob Chase, past president of NEA, was on the GLSEN board for years, has been on for about a decade. He's leaving the board. Guess who's coming on is just leaving the NEA's executive director, John Wilson. So, and they were listed right on the homepage of GLSEN as a donor and a sponsor of GLSEN. The Ohio Education Association is mini-me of the NEA. It's just the same thing, only here, I've been at the State House testifying on some of these bills, and some of this stuff is just unbelievable when you see it, manifest itself at the local level. They opposed Ohio's Defense of Marriage Act. 85% of OEA's money goes to the Democratic Party. In 2008, it was something like $800 and some thousand. These are demonstrably anti-Christian organizations. It's very hard to live out Christian values and be an active member and pay these monies. It's essentially hate for Christianity and Christian values. And we are wrong if we don't speak up and say this and vote with our dollars where we can.
We have Jade Thompson, who is also an Ohio teacher from Marietta. She's the wife of Andy Thompson, who is a representative in the Ohio House. Jade has appeared on Fox TV with Sean Hannity, and her topic tonight, how my union dues were used. Jade?
My story is compelling, but probably not unique. I can imagine what spouses of candidates in national races have to go through after what I've endured with my husband's little old state rep race. I am not naive about the dirty way that politics works. I expect a certain amount of below-the-belt tactics, as that is part of the game, whether you like it or not. But I do not expect to be funding these tactics directly. My husband and I try to live with honesty, character, humility, and Christian principles. However, if attacked, we feel compelled to defend ourselves and respond effectively. Last year, after Labor Day, when the election season began to heat up, my husband, who was running for state rep for the 93rd District, was the target of a nasty smear campaign. Friends, neighbors, even acquaintances belonging to the opposing party began calling to say they received negative mailings about my husband's record on Marietta City Council. Unflattering, mocking pictures, complete lies were the basis of 14 different slick and expensively produced mailers. Television and radio ads began running continuously, with ominous tones suggesting dark motives on my husband's part. I remember seeing the first mailer, checking out the return address, and discovering to my horror that they were funded by the OEA and the SEIU. And you've heard both of them mentioned tonight, the Ohio Education Association and the Service Employees International Union. My own teachers union. The realization that my dues were being used to attack my own husband were like a lightning bolt to the head. They outspent my husband 12-1. My email was returned with a terse reply stating that I was merely a fee payer. My local union president did not have to hear my complaint. Next, I asked an attorney friend to draft a letter to the union requesting an audit of their budget and voicing my objection to any of my dues being spent in this dishonorable way. They only concede to using 10% of dues on campaign purposes. They spend quite a bit on what they call member communication. which translates to expensive mailers and newsletters full of propaganda telling you how to vote. So I began a letter writing campaign to the local surrounding newspapers to voice my outrage. From there, and subsequent to my husband's successful election, I was contacted by the Sean Hannity show to come and tell my story in the midst of the Wisconsin controversy over public unions.
Unions out of control, and it's not just in the state of Wisconsin. In fact, the chaos may be contagious as it is now spreading all across the Midwest. In Ohio, another teachers union is making headlines today, but for entirely different reasons. The Ohio Education Association seems to have overstepped its bounds by using union dues to push a liberal political agenda. And now one member is taking a very personal stand. Jade Thompson, a high school Spanish teacher in Marietta, Ohio, has paid her annual dues of $700 since she joined the union in 2003. And when she began receiving the OEA monthly magazine, she determined the publication was heavily politicized, with most articles leaning to the left. But that was nothing compared to what she would soon discover when friends and colleagues showed Thompson's mailings that they had received in October of last year. Now, multiple attack ads paid for by the OEA against a Republican running for the State House of Representatives, a Republican who also just happened to be her husband. When Thompson realized it was her dues funding a political campaign against her own husband, she was shocked and angry. And now, despite the fact that her husband has since won his election, she is sounding off and standing up to her own union to fight not only for her rights, but for the rights of teachers everywhere. Joining me now from Charleston, West Virginia is Jade Thompson. Jade, welcome to the program. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Sean. It's a pleasure to be here. I live in a state that's not a right-to-work state, and so I am forced to join a union that I don't support.
Why don't union members, and maybe you've discussed this now with fellow union members, why aren't they more angry at the unions for their involvement in these political campaigns when that's rank and file money? Have you spoken to your union leaders and said, hey, wait a minute,
Oh, yeah.
this is my money, and you're attacking my husband as he's running for political campaign? Did you speak to them, and what did they say?
Well, I said to her, I have this horrible thing that's happening. I'd like to bring it to your attention. They're lies about my husband. They're trying to discredit his record, and it's funded by the Ohio Education Association and the SEIU, and I take offense.
That experience was wonderful for me because it put me in contact with supporters, professionals, teachers, people I did not know existed. And once they learned that he was away in Columbus and were asked to leave, they were overheard saying, "We know where Representative Thompson lives, we'll go to his house." There is no limit on what these heavy-handed protesters will do, and such unethical tactics are precisely the reason that good people choose not to run for public office. I ask teachers who agree with me that their union does not represent them to stand up, speak up, and join together so our voices will be heard and our message will prevail. We mustn't be intimidated. We can't give in to the fear of repercussion or cave into the thug tactics of the union. We must speak out and demand true representation and work for the end of forced unionism.